There are a lot of people who think that Akuma and Ryu are really similar characters. They're both Shotos, they both have fireballs, they both have a Shoryuken. The only big difference is that Akuma has way faster walk speed, but he has less health than Ryu, which means he's a riskier character to play. But this article, written by a Japanese player who has over 2,000 MR with multiple characters, argues something a bit more interesting than that. And this person says that Akuma doesn't win by limiting your options. Instead, he wins by giving you too many things to think about. Now, today I'm going to be translating this article and breaking down what that actually means, and this isn't just for you Akuma players out there, this is for anybody who's trying to understand how Akuma and Ryu wants to play this game in the neutral. So here's the translation document right here. It's by a channel called Nikotaro Gaming. I'll leave a link in the description. And before we start, the most important thing is right here, and it says don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button because it helps Chris make more videos like this and build his channel. So I mean, I'm not going to argue with an over 2,000 MR player. This guy knows what he's talking about. So just to start, I'm going to skip to the 7th point of this note because I think starting with this one actually makes a little bit more sense. What do weak Akuma players do? So he lists 5 things that weak Akuma players tend to do from his experience. So number 1 is doing too much Demon Raid to try to attack their opponent, basing most of their gameplay off throws, trying to take too much damage mid-screen, which just basically means like overextending mid-screen to get your damage, always attacking with the same patterns, and last is putting your opponent in block stun and then taking like a wait and see approach. So basically touching your opponent and then trying to get reads based off what they do after that. And the author goes on to say that all 5 of these points are things that Akuma does not need to win and to be strong. So what do strong Akuma players do? Number 1, walk, change their spacing, stop their movement just for a little bit, and then start moving forward right away again. And he says this is a really strong rhythm that can't be stopped. And an important point here that he makes is that this isn't to like pressure your opponent to start attacking right away. This is to reduce the amount of time your opponent has to think. So now that we know the differences, what the author thinks strong Akuma players and weak Akuma players do, let's get into the first point of this article. And the first point says, the true reason why Akuma is difficult to play. So the author starts off by saying, a lot of people say Akuma has strong pressure, but actually, you need to have the decision-making abilities to continue pressuring your opponent with this character. The author goes on to say that Ryu is a character who reduces the amount of decisions your opponent can make in a match and gain stability that way. Meanwhile, Akuma increases the amount of things your opponent has to think about and then continues to pressure their opponent by basically overloading their mental stack. Just for some context, let's see what the author actually means by that. So when he says Ryu reduces the amount of decisions you can make in a match, let's look at Ryu's forward heavy punch, one of the most crazy moves in this game right now. So the really strong thing about this move is here, if I'm the Akuma player, I'm standing in a position where it just barely whiffs or like just barely hits right outside here, right? But if I try to walk backwards once the move actually starts up, I'm locked in proximity guard during this, and I actually can't move backwards. So Ryu is taking away my ability to make the decision of walking backwards and creating space because this move just kind of sucks you in, stops you from walking backwards. Akuma can't do that. That's just one really quick example, but this really puts into perspective what the author is trying to say in the main differences between these two characters. And then of course you have things like medium donkey kick, which you can't really whiff punish on reaction and stuff like that, but that's a whole nother topic. Part 2 of this article talks about Akuma's main goal as a character, and the author says Akuma's main goal is to continue pressuring your opponent before your opponent gets a read on you as the Akuma player. Akuma's goal is to put his opponent into a position or keep his opponent in a position where they can't choose the correct answer in that situation. Now it just basically means to confuse your opponent and overload their mental stack. Now why is he able to do that? Because his movement speed is really fast, he's able to control spacing with his Hadoken, he has a command grab, and he also has Demon Raid, so he can change his jump arcs. And when you use Akuma's fast walk speed, plus his fast fireballs, and the fact that he can change his air trajectory, you basically put your opponent into positions where they say, I don't know where I should be looking, or I don't know what I should be looking for, because there are too many things to always look for, and I can't pick the right one all the time just because he's so fast and there are so many things that he can do. And he says Akuma is not a character that touches you, like makes contact with you and then takes plus frames. He's a character that touches you and then basically breaks you down there from the decisions that come afterwards. And that brings us to point 4, where he's talking about the differences of Akuma and Ryu's Fireball. And he mentions 3 main differences between Akuma and Ryu's Fireball. So the first one is that the motion is hard to see. The second one is that the fireballs are faster for Akuma. And the third one is that it's very hard to see the fireball react and make the right decision based on what you're supposed to do. Like the easiest differences to see between Akuma and Ryu's fireball is the motion. You'll see that Ryu kind of throws his right arm back when he has that fireball. It's kind of easy to see the startup. Meanwhile, Akuma, when he does it, his arms don't go backwards. So it's harder to actually see when Akuma wants to throw this fireball. And excuse me for all the whiff jabs, it's kind of hard to do this at 50% game speed. So just continuing from these 3 points, he says, with all these 3 things considered, it basically means that the opponent can't look for the fireball motion and then make a decision. He says it reduces their ability to look for a Hadoken and react at mid to close ranges. The real reason for Akuma's fireball, the main reason why he wants to use it, is to just create noise. And what I think he means by noise, he doesn't say this here, this isn't an actual translation, but I think he's trying to say increase mental stack. Just gives you one more thing to look for, and also to control the pace of neutral, so he can use his walk speed, both forward, back, and throwing out moves as pokes, to kind of put everything together with his fireball game. And then the author finishes off this 4th point about Hadokens by saying he uses the noise and the mental stack from fireballs, plus his walk speed, walking back, walking forward, throwing out moves, to slow down your tempo as the opponent, and then use that hesitation or that slowness in your decision making to break you down and create an opening. Okay, next, and I think you guys are gonna like this one. This is talking about his air raid, demon air raid, this thing, the command jump. Everyone's favorite move because it's so much fun to try to react to this and try to anti-air it. And he says, this move is not supposed to be used as a surprise attack. He goes, that's kind of like half right, but you're missing the other half of the picture of this move. He says, the real point of this move is to use it mid-screen to increase the amount of information, the amount of things your opponent is looking for mid-screen. So what can he do? He can just jump, he can land, he can do any of the follow-ups, he can cross you up, and then he can also change his timing with all of those things. And when you start doing that, it just basically means that the opponent doesn't know how to react to this appropriately. And I like this little line here as summary. The closest way I can kind of convey this in English is saying, Akuma's air raid is not a move that's used to reduce your opponent's decision-making resources. It's a move that's used to increase the decisions that they have to make. And I think that's a really big and really interesting way of thinking about this. You're not reducing their decision-making abilities, you're giving them more things to think about, which in turn ends up making them do nothing, hopefully, as long as you're using it right. All right, now the 6th point, which I think everybody kind of understands at this point in the game's life, he's saying that Akuma is the strongest Shoto when he has his opponent in the corner, better than everybody else. He goes, he is incredibly strong in the corner, however, his corner carry game isn't nearly as good as Ryu, and the author didn't write this, but not as good as Ken's either. However, once you get somewhere mid-screen and you're able to splat the opponent on the wall with this special move here, then everything starts to change. So a big part of Akuma, according to the author here, is to get your opponent into a range mid-screen where you can land a combo using that OD special move, make them hit the wall, and now you can do whatever you want. But when you're kind of in like this position, this isn't quite that strong because your opponent can keep on walking back. So basically, now that we kind of have all that understood, what the author says is, in summary, Akuma's goal mid-screen is to take some damage, but to not overextend and really try to break your opponent mid-screen. His main goal is to get mid-screen, get to the point where you can get the wall splat with the quarter circle back OD special move. I always forget the name of it, but you basically go for that, bring him to the corner, and then get your offense going when you have your opponent in the corner, because that's where he really shines. That's his strongest point. And then the author says, once you understand this, the whole way you look at Akuma's like footsies and neutral will completely change, and it becomes a different thing altogether. And that brings us to point 9, the final summary, the decisive differences between Ryu and Akuma in Street Fighter 6. So he starts by saying, what are the 3 main things Ryu can do? So number 1 is reduce the amount of decisions you have in a match, which we talked about before. The second one's a little hard to translate. I'm going to kind of guess what he's trying to say here. I think he's trying to say create the flow of the match. So this right here, this is katachi o tsukuru, which basically means like create the shape. So I think by create the shape, he means create the shape, the flow, dictate the flow of the match. I'm kind of just assuming what the author means here, so excuse me if I'm wrong. And then last is basically lock your opponent down. Then for Akuma, he says you want to increase the amount of decisions your opponent has to make, reduce the amount of time they have to make those decisions. And then to be honest, I'm not quite sure how to translate this one. This is kind of a weird Japanese choice for me. He says kwashikiru. Kwashikiru means just like break down, like just break them down. So I think it just means like use your offense, use your strong like damage output in the corner to win the match and to kind of beat your opponent. But excuse me on this one, I'm not quite sure, to be perfectly honest with you. It's kind of an odd choice from the author. I would love to know from the author what they actually wanted to say in a little bit more like standard Japanese. He's getting a little artistic here on this one. And then finally here he says, even though they're both characters that have fireballs and shoryukens, the way they win the match and the way they play neutral are pretty much mere opposites of each other. And then finally he leaves us with people who he thinks are suited to play or to main Akuma. And that's going to be these 3 kinds of people. People who are very good at making decisions quickly and continuously in a match. people who become stronger as the situation changes. So basically people who are good at adapting and creating different tempos during the flow of a match from the start to the finish. And then last, people who don't really want to play completely safe all the time, but would rather take some risk on risk reward and the perceived reward you get from certain decisions in certain situations. So basically people who don't want to play super safe and are ready to kind of like, you know, get the win and be a little bit more forward pushing. And then he makes a little analogy between Akuma and shogi, but I'm going to assume most of the people watching my channel don't know what shogi is, and neither do I, so I'm going to leave it there. But that brings us to the end of this article. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, I didn't write this. This is from Nikotaro Gaming, so check out his site. But yeah, guys, let me know in the comments, what do you think? Do you agree with everything he said? Again, this is just a translation. Doesn't mean everything is right. It's just this person's opinion, and I added a little bit of my own context there. But let me know what you thought. If there's anything you think he missed or I missed, let me know in the comments, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Take care. Peace.